Hey everyone, finally the bread recipe. So we can put to good use the starter that you maybe made following the steps in the other videos that I published earlier, or maybe you have a different sourdough bread starter. I also posted another video with the tools that you need to make sourdough bread. I also wanted to give you the ingredients right here, because during the video I kind of mentioned them one by one, so I'd rather have them here in one spot. So for the initial refresh, you need your sourdough starter, a couple spoons of it. And then to them I personally added 120 grams water and 120 grams flour. Then after this initial levain that you create, this initial starter that you create for the bread, you mix it with 730 grams water. In the recipe I explain exactly how, and 1000 grams, 1 kilo of flour, of which I used 150 wholemeal whole wheat and 850 bread flour. Make sure your starter is nice and active, and yeah, let's do it. Let's go and make bread. Let's go and make bread. So every time I bake and I do one of my baking projects, I start taking my sourdough starter, and you see, look at all these bubbles. This starter has been fed actually just yesterday morning. It's pretty active. So I start by taking some of the starter. It is actually not so important how much of it you take, seriously. My habit is kind of taking 2 spoons, like normal spoons, which pretty full spoons. You see, that's the texture of the starter. This is my reliable working starter that I baked so much bread with, and it works great. This is all a wholemeal starter. As you can see, it's pretty dark. So this is 90 grams, but it's not even that I'm gonna use it as a reference. Now, first step, every time you do refresh your starter, you put the starter in your bowl and then you add water. I'm going for 100% hydration. Now I have here this 90 gram starter. I'm gonna put 120 grams water. And then mix well. If you have a Danish whisk, even better. At this moment, because I'm going to bake something with it, I want to start putting the flour that I'm going to use for my baking. So the yeast starts to get used to the different kind of flour. So I'm gonna put 100 gram bread flour and just 20 grams of wholemeal. And that's it. The process is always really simple. That's it. We have the silicone covers, pretty good. And then this is gonna sit in the kitchen for 6 to 8 hours. It should definitely double and even more in size. And then it's gonna be ready to actually make bread, cake, panettone, baguette, whatever you want to make. So this is the sourdough starter that's been standing there for several hours. We're gonna just do a little test to see if it's ready for bread making or not. So you already saw it's very bubbly, but we need to see if it's actually ready. So I'm going to just take a small quantity of this, and then I'm going to put it inside this cup of water and then see if it floats. If it floats, it's ready. Ooh, it definitely floats. that means that we can make bread. So this flour has a level of protein, that's the number you should take a look at, close to 14%. And you need those proteins to build the gluten in your bread, so it has structure, it can hold together, make all the nice bubbles, a nice crumb. This is a really good flour, it's stone ground. Use a good flour, it's better. So the bread I'm going to make is going to be at around 73% hydration, which means that for 1 kilo of flour is going to be 730 gram water. I warmed it up a little bit to 33 degrees. Now I'm being picky and I use a thermometer, but actually just use slightly warmer water. It's better, but otherwise it just changes a little bit the timing, but it shouldn't make actually a decisive difference. It's just being a little bit nerdy. So I'm not going to pour all of it here, so I'm going to pour around 500, let's say. Try and be precise though with the ratio of the water and the flour, which you will learn to adapt to the exact quantity you want, because it really depends on the kind of flour you're using. It makes a huge difference, and if you need to work with a very wet dough, it's really complicated. So as you can see, I'm just pouring the flour in here, and there is no sourdough starter. Where's the sourdough starter? What am I doing? This is my latest evolution in making bread. Just trust me. Okay, there's not enough water here, I need more water. So I said 73%, so 730 grams, I already put 500. I'm going to put 180 more, so I will leave 50 grams for a phase that I will do a little bit later. So right now I'm simply mixing water and flour, that's it. I just need to mix it until the water is absorbed. So here I have the other 50 grams of water that I still need to add. So I have here 680 and here I have 50. I will add most of them later, but now because it's quite stiff I'm going to add a little bit more. I think it's fine. It really does not need to be anything that looks good. Just a mass of water and flour, a shaggy mass. That's it for now. I'm gonna cover it, just the board, just because it's comfortable for me. And we'll leave it here, like this, in the kitchen, again, warmish place, for 40 minutes. Hey Siri, set timer for 40 minutes.
Okay, your timer is set for 40 minutes.
Yeah. See you in a bit. So this was waiting for us 40 minutes, and it's just flour and water. And now I'm going to add the other ingredients. In particular, I'm going to add the sourdough starter, because without it we won't have any bread. So I need 200 grams of sourdough starter, the mature sourdough starter, the one beautiful bubbly that we created earlier. And salt, 24 grams salt. Looks a lot, but you will need it. And then the remaining water, there was the 50 gram that we kept on the side, maybe a bit less because I used a bit more earlier. Now it should become much more wet, everything, because we're adding more water, the sourdough starter that's quite liquidy, so it's going to become a bit messy. Okay, so we have our dough, flour and water, sourdough starter, salt, extra water. Now hands, dig in with your right hand. You can use your left hand to hold the ball. You can use only your right hand. Just dig in like a claw. After a little bit you can start to lift part of the dough and fold it onto itself. You can see this is a pretty wet thing, but again, just don't be afraid. First part is mixed, so now you start, basically you need to just pull part of the dough and then fold it back. Then you turn, you give a little bit of a turn to the ball, pull, and then fold. So this technique actually has a name. It is stretch and fold. Stretch and fold. Stretch and fold. Every time you move it a little bit. And you need to keep doing this for, I would say, around 10 minutes. If you feel that your hand becomes too sticky with dough, just put it under the water a little bit. As you work through the dough, the gluten starts to make it more and more elastic, give it a structure. You'll see it even more in the next phases. Right now it doesn't need to become perfectly smooth. That's fine, something like that. Once you're done the kneading, you'll cover it again. You leave it in the kitchen for 30 minutes. And this is going to be for the first 2 hours. Every 30 minutes we will do something. Okay, so we've waited 30 minutes. That's how it looks. Again, we just dig our hand one side and start a sequence of stretch and fold. Just pull. You see how it's suddenly become much more extendable. Pull and fold. I'm just going to do it a little bit just because it's the first one. But you can see how the dough is much more in his own, much more introvert dough now. Look, now it almost stands. See? 2 minutes, done. 30 more minutes now. As time passes, be more and more delicate so you don't damage the structure of the dough. And again, look at this now. Look at this bubble. It's definitely something is happening here underneath. Now we're gonna leave it for one last hour. It should be fine, but you'll learn and see how your dough is proofing, if it's too much, if it's not enough. One more hour covered, and then we'll go to finally pre-shaping the bread. So we waited 3 hours. And now it's time to start pre-shaping the bread. It looks pretty active, it's grown definitely, it's bubbly. Let's see. So now we need to actually do something on the counter. We cannot do it anymore in the bowl. So I'm using this plastic scraper, but it's not, you don't need it. Now I'm just gonna pour it kind of vaguely, delicately onto the counter. Okay. Now we're gonna put some flour. Now this is for 2 loaves, so we have to cut it in half, more or less. Is it? We cut it in half, we flip it around so the flour, the part with the flour is now underneath it on the table. Then we fold it in 2. Yeah, this scraper is actually quite a useful tool to have. So strongly recommended. And now, with the help of the scraper as well, or only with your hand, start shaping a loaf, kind of round loaf shape. So this kind of movement, rotation, and then another important movement is basically putting your hands underneath the dough and then pulling it backwards so that it kind of slides and it builds tension. Bring it back and pull it. And pull it. You can clearly see how the surface of the dough is increasing its tension. That's because we want to make it keep the shape. Okay, this one is fine. Now the same thing for the other part. Okay, so now we're gonna cover those 2 loaves with a clean kitchen cloth, not this one. We cover and we leave them for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then we'll do the final shaping and finally put those loaves in the fridge in the bannetons. Okay, so 20 minutes have passed, more or less, and they've spread out a little bit, but now we're gonna fix them. But before doing the final shaping, so here I have 2 bannetons. You can use different bowls, but this is the ideal container. Still, you need every time to flour them, and I'm using a combination of rice flour and normal bread flour. It seems like a lot, but you really don't want the loaves to stick to these baskets. So the baskets are ready. And now we're back to our loaves. So shaping again, some flour, not sunflower, some flour. With the scraper, we turn it upside down, and now we do this. We just flatten it a little bit, and then we pull one side. The other side, like this, could be sticking actually to the board, which is good. And then we fold it down. Then we take the other side, help with the scraper if required, and we fold it back, kind of envelope fold. Then one side, we fold it to the middle, other side, fold it back to itself. Then you turn it around and you start doing again those movements to kind of push. You kind of push with the side of your hand underneath, so kind of keeps building this tension on the surface, and you create a shape. And again you do this rolling motion, where you roll and then you do this pulling, pull, as long as you feel it's necessary. It's enough. Now I'm putting it just up in the Banneton, upside down. So I'm turning it around and I'm putting it upside down in the Banneton. This will go in a plastic bag, possibly in a plastic bag that you can tie around it, and then into the fridge. Bags. Just tie a simple knot to the bag, and then we leave this bread, these loaves in the fridge the whole night. So this is gonna spend the night, so you can bake it in the morning. You can do it also differently, it's not like the only way. Next stage is going to be the actual scoring and baking of the bread. So, bye! Took it out from the fridge and it's in the basket. It's grown a little bit, not too much. And now I'm gonna flip it over this piece of parchment paper. And I'm gonna just... Oh, it was enough flour because it fell nicely out of it. I'm using a brush to remove the excess flour that's on top of it, but again, this is not an essential tool, really. The oven is hot, maximum temperature. The Dutch oven is inside, it's been there for an hour now, which is probably too much. So everything is ready. I'm just cutting this corner off so it kind of fits better into the cast iron in the Dutch oven. Now it's the scoring moment. That's would deserve a full chapter. It's very important to allow the oven spring of the loaf. So the loaf, when it still grows inside the oven, it puffs up. You want to make it puff in a way that is not exploding to the side, not expanding to the sides. And so the cuts you make on the bread help directing this rise. And so I would make for this one the most classic one, which is basically just a cross. And so I'm using this lamb. should be very, very sharp. You cannot use like a knife that is not sharp enough, because it's not gonna give you a good, clear cut into the dough. Nice and deep enough, not too deep, but still. Right. Now it's time to put it in the oven. As soon as possible. Dutch oven out of the oven. Closing the oven. Now we'll leave it maximum temperature for 22 minutes. And then we'll uncover it. Right, it's time to reveal and see if the bread looks good or not. I'm just going to quickly uncover it. Yeah, it puffed nicely. That's good. And off. And then I will put it for 22 more minutes. I mean, again, that's the timing I'm using with my oven. Every oven is different. Who knows? You'll see what happens with your oven. And we'll see you in 22 minutes when the bread is ready. I'm sorry, I have pancakes in my mouth. Alright. Should be fine. Let's do this. Ah, look at that. It's pretty beautiful. Take it carefully and put it on something that we didn't put out, a rack, to dry it off. Look at that. Wonderful. Different kind of scoring on crisscross.
Do you want to talk about how the fact that it's a curved blade means you're making curved cuts?
So this is a curved blade, so minutes have passed. Let's see. And let's uncover.
Ooh,
Nice.
gorgeous.
This one.